Hi everyone, welcome to Unit 2, and today we are going to talk about experiences, and also we will speak about a grammar topic that is very confusing sometimes, but we will try and make it easier. It's the present perfect. So today, like I said, we are going to start with the first lesson, which is hopes and dreams. Now I'm going to show you 5 individuals and they'll talk about their hopes and dreams. The first one is Jill Anderson, the second Sonia and Carlos Silva, the third Raquel Garza, and the fourth and the fifth Hiro Tanaka. So you have about 5 people who are going to talk about their dreams and what they hope to do. We'll go one by one. So if you see in the first slide, Jill is talking about her dreams. So she says, actually, I've always wanted to be an actor. I haven't had any formal training, but I've been in a couple of college plays. So my dream is to study acting. So this is her dream, which is to study acting. Now we move on to the second couple, Carlos and Sonia Silva. And they say, well, Carlos and I have gone sailing a few times with friends and we've had a lot of fun. So our dream is to buy our new sailboat, buy our own sailboat. But we haven't saved enough money. As you can see, they like sailing and they want to buy a sailboat, but they don't have enough money because they haven't saved enough money. Now let's move on to the fourth one, and that is Raquel Garza. And she says, my dream to go surfing. I've never tried it before, but my brother goes surfing all the time. He's even surfed in Hawaii. As you can see, she's from Mexico and her dream is to go surfing. She has never gone surfing, but she would like to go to surf because her brother goes surfing all the time. Now we go to the last, fifth individual, and he's Hiro Tanaka from Japan. And he says, well, my parents have never traveled outside of Japan, so I want to take them to Europe. I've been there a couple of times, so I know all the best places to go. As you can see, Hiro wants to go to Japan. Hiro wants to take his parents out of Japan and he wants them to experience Europe because they have never been to any other country outside of Japan. So that is his dream. He wants to take his parents outside of Japan. Now, you will see that when people talk about their hopes and dreams and even experiences, they use a verb tense that is known as the present perfect. So in this slide, you can see that she says, actually, I have always wanted to be an actor. So she has always wanted to be an actor. Okay, if you see this formation, it says she has always. And when she's talking about herself, she says, I have always wanted to be an actor. And this is her dream. She also says, I haven't had any formal training. You would say she hasn't had any formal training. In this as well, please note the formation of this sentence. And in the next one, she says, but I've been in a couple of college plays. She has been in a couple of college plays. So please look at the formation. When she talks about her hopes and dreams, she uses I with have and the verb in past participle. Right? If you see the formation, the verb is in past participle. When we use I've, this is a contracted form of I have. So you will see this form in a lot of present perfect statements. Okay? Now let's go to the next one. Sonny and Carlos Silva. As you can see, they're talking about sailing. They're talking about sailing. They've gone sailing with friends and they have had a lot of fun. They say that I have gone sailing a few times with friends and we've had a lot of fun. They also say something about money. They say that they cannot buy their own sailboat because we haven't saved enough money. So they have not saved enough money becomes they haven't saved enough money. Okay? Please note that you will use the contracted form of have and not as haven't saved enough money. Okay? So these two forms are completely correct. There is no, and they are not incorrect in any way. If you say have not or haven't, it is correct. Now let's see what Raquel says. Raquel says she has never tried surfing and she wants to go and do it. Right? She has never tried surfing. Because she says, I've never tried it before. So she wants to go surfing. Now Hiro says, my parents have never traveled outside of Japan. So you would say, his parents have never traveled outside Japan or outside of Japan. Okay? Please notice the formation of the sentence. In this form, we call the sentence or call the tense the present perfect. I will explain to you in detail a bit later. He has been to Europe many times and wants to take them. So he says, I've been to Europe many times. Right? And when you talk in the third person, you say, he has been to Europe many times. So what is the present perfect and why do we use it? Present perfect is used to talk about an experience in the past when you don't want to really mention when it happened. Okay? You want to talk about something, you want to talk about your experience, but you don't want to mention when it happened. You can use the present perfect form. Alright? Now I will explain to you a bit further how you make the form and what is the form all about. So present perfect looks something like this. If you look at these three sentences, the first says, the men paint the house. Okay? The men, plural, paint the house. This is in present. In the past tense, I would say, the men painted the house. Okay? And in the third, the men have painted the house becomes a present perfect sentence. Now if you see this sentence, you will notice that there is no time given here. There is no indication of time. We know that the men have painted the house when we do not know that. We just know that this activity has taken place. Okay? So now let's talk about the form. The present perfect tense is formed by two things. The auxiliary verb have or has in all forms, in affirmative, in negative, and in interrogative when you ask questions, and the past participle. So please remember that you need to use these two things, the auxiliary verb and the past participle. Okay? For example, she has worked in that office for 6 years. Now, in this case, she has worked means that for 6 years she has worked in that office. You have to use two parts. The first, the auxiliary have or has. In this case, you will use has because it is the third person. So it is I have, you have, he or she or it has. Okay, and the rest are with have. Worked in that office for 6 years. So with worked is the third form of the verb work. Okay, please remember that you will use the past participle in present perfect. So do remember, when you make the present perfect, you use two things, the auxiliary of have or has. This will be in all three forms, affirmative, negative, and interrogative, and the past participle of the verb. Okay? Now this is very important. Now let's go to the next example. I have already eaten breakfast. Okay? Now remember, eaten is an irregular form. It's an irregular form of the verb eat. Okay? She has seen the movie before. Seen is also the irregular form of to see. We have dealt with customers for many years. It's an irregular form of the verb deal. She has used a cash register before. So the verb is used. This is a regular verb. He has worked for that company since May. This is also the past participle of the verb work. We have already served their food is the past participle of the verb serve. Now please remember that with regular form of verbs, the past participle takes ed at the end. It looks like you are talking about the simple past, but it is not the simple past. It is called the past participle, the third form of the verb. Okay? Now, if you see the verbs above, eaten, seen, and dealt are irregular forms of the verb. That is why at the end they do not have an ed. Okay? Now let's go and see the contractions. The contractions of present perfect are very easy. You can easily determine contractions when you see, because the words, the formation is with a comma on the top. Okay, it's like an apostrophe on the top. You would say something like I have, and the contraction becomes I've. The negative becomes I haven't. Okay, you have becomes you've, and the negative becomes you haven't. Okay, now we have becomes we've, and the negative becomes we haven't. They have becomes they've, and the negative becomes they haven't. He has or she has becomes he's or she's, and the negative becomes he hasn't. or she hasn't. The same goes with it has becomes it's and it hasn't. Please remember that this is very different from he is and she is. This means he has and she has. Many students confuse he has with he is. So this is not the case. I have lived in Florida for 2 years. If you see, the contracted form becomes I've lived in Florida for 2 years. Okay? Please remember, contracted forms are mostly used in present perfect. Okay? This is a very common formation of the verb. So I have becomes I've, you have becomes you've, we have becomes we've, they have becomes they've, he has become he becomes he's, she has becomes she's, and it has becomes it's. Please also remember that the negative is as equally important. So I haven't, you haven't, we haven't, they haven't, he hasn't, not haven't, but he hasn't, she hasn't, and it hasn't. So this is the contracted form of the verb with have in present perfect. Please remember that contracted forms are mostly used in the perfect tenses. Now, we've talked about how you make the present perfect. Now you will see why we use the present perfect and in what situations we will use the present perfect. Okay? So there are two main reasons why we use the present perfect. There are two main reasons, and they are very different from one another. Can you guess the two reasons? You have seen many examples, so can you guess the two reasons why we use present perfect? Okay, let's see the two reasons. The first one is we use present perfect tense when we talk about a completed action in the past when the time is not specified. Now this becomes very confusing, but in simple language it means that you talk about a completed action in the past, but you don't talk about when it happened. Okay? You talk about the action, but you don't really remember when the action happened. So you don't know when the time, you don't know the time, or you don't know when something happened, or you don't just care about it. You just want to say something happened, but not when. In that case, you will use the present perfect. Now, please remember that if something happened before now, but not at a specific time, will be expressed with present perfect. How? I have already eaten breakfast, which means that that action is over. She's seen that movie before, means that the action is over. But when did I eat breakfast, or when did she see the movie is not important. It's not even clear. Nobody tells you when. They just give you a statement that something happened in the past. They don't tell you the exact time. Okay, that is the first reason. Now, when we want to ask a question about something that happened before now, we will say something like this: have you ever? Has she ever? Have they ever? Or have you ever? Now, if you look at the questions, this is how you will form them. Have you ever worked at a job you really loved? Have you ever worked at a job has she ever worked at a job she really hated? Have they ever used a cash register? Have you ever supervised other employees? So, in this case, the answer will be short. Yes, I have. No, I haven't. Or, yes, she has. No, she hasn't. Okay? In this case, when they ask you they, you will say yes, they have, or no, they haven't. When you ask a question in present perfect about something that happened before, but you don't want to say when, you will say, or you will ask something like, have you ever? Okay? Now let's look at a few rules. Now there are a few rules when you talk about present perfect. There are also a way to recognize how to use present perfect. So I'm going to give you just a few rules. If you want to ask a question about something that happened at a specific time in the past, we wouldn't use present perfect tense. We will use a different tense, and that tense is the simple past. So in simple past, you ask when. When did they use a cash register? They used a cash register last year. When did you supervise other people? I supervised other people 2 years ago. So this is the way you can differentiate between perfect tense and simple past, because simple past talks about when. Things like last year, yesterday, 2 years ago, last week, etc. All of these words we use with the simple past tense. Okay? If you compare it with the present perfect, it will not give you specific time. Okay? Now we often use the present perfect with already. You will see this a lot. We use words like already, yet, just, etc. a lot. We use these words a lot with the present perfect. Now if you see a few sentences, it says, I've already eaten breakfast. She's already read that book. You're too late. He's already left for school. If you see, no one is talking about the time here. The specific time is not mentioned. Already means it has already happened. We usually use yet in questions to find out if something happened before. For example, have you bought your mother a present yet? Has she seen the movie yet? Have they left for school yet? Etc. Okay? Now, often when we are speaking, we go back and forth, back and forth. Generally, you will see that people use a lot of present perfect and simple past tenses. For example, if you see this example, it says, Miko, have you ever supervised other people? And Miko says, Tanaya says, yes, I have. Okay? Miko says, when did you do that? And Tanaya says, I supervised others last year in my previous job. If you see the first part is a present perfect sentence, because he's asking a question about has she ever supervised other people? And the answer should be pretty short. Yes, I have. The other part is when you use the simple past tense and you say, when did you do that? When did you supervise other people? And Tanaya says, I supervised others last year in my previous job. Okay? So you will be able to compare the two sentences and the differences, because in the present perfect, the time is not specified. Now the second reason why we use it, we use a lot of signal words like for, since, just, already, then, Okay, yet, and these are used in the present perfect a lot. So, with words like for and since, we talk about something that began in the past, but it is still continuing right now. For example, I've studied in this school since June, and this means that I am still studying. Okay? This sentence means that I am still studying in the school. Now, she's lived in West Palm Beach for 2 months, which means she is still living in the West Palm Beach. Okay? This is what the sentence means. This is still a continuous action. It is still going on right now. That is when you will use for and since. When we use since with a point in time, we use present perfect and the point in time. For example, I've been recording this video since Sunday. Okay, so I give a time, point in time, like 5 o'clock, Monday, since 1994. I will tell you that that was the time it started, that something started. I've worked at this job since last year. He's lived in Florida since March. They've been married since 1985. This is a point in time. Since will also introduce a time clause. For example, I've lived in Lake Worth since I moved to Florida. So if you see what happened after, I was living in Lake Worth and now I'm living in Florida. So please remember that for and since will always talk about something that began in the past, but it still continues right now. The main difference between since and for is that since uses a point in time and for uses a length in time. For example, we use present perfect with for and a length in time, like for 10 minutes, for 2 weeks, for 3 years, for a long time. This means that the present condition is lasting for a long time and it is still happening. So when we use for, we use a length of time, and these are a few examples. I've worked at this job for 1 year. He's lived in Florida for 9 months. They've been married for a long time. This means that the present condition is still relevant. It is still there. So, if you see, how do we ask questions in this tense? You remember we asked, have you ever? There is also another way that you can ask this question. You can say, how long? Okay, how long? So, for example, you can say something like this. How long has she studied English at the UIDE? That means, how long has this been happening? You want to talk about the length of time. Okay? This is when you will use how long. When we want to know the length of time something has taken place, we use the question word how long. Now, after all this explanation, I want you to do a bit of an exercise. Please look at these sentences. These are only a few words that I've just put together. I want you to try and make negative or affirmative sentences, but use the present perfect tense and these words that are given to you. So, for example, if you see the first example, the first sentence, it says, he lose his passport. How will you make this into a present perfect sentence? You would say, he has lost his passport. Okay, so you will use he has lost because the past participle of lose is lost. Okay, so if you were to see it, you would say he has lost his passport. Similarly, you have a few more sentences, and I want you to do those sentences, and we will check the answer to each one in a little while. So please take some time and do these sentences, and then we will check them one by one. Okay, were you able to make a few sentences? Maybe sentence number B, number C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Did you make any? Let's check the answers now. So, when I asked you to write with present perfect tense, I wanted you to write the sentence like this. He lose his passport becomes he has lost his passport. We not finish our work becomes we haven't finished our work. Remember, we haven't finished our work. They buy a new house. They've bought a new house. I visit New York 5 times. I've visited New York 5 times. They go to the cinema. They've gone to the cinema. Okay? You eat 4 bananas. You've eaten 4 bananas. She not travel far. She hasn't traveled far. I not do any homework. I've not done any homework. We not study French. We haven't studied French. Now these are a few sentences that you can make using present perfect. Remember, the present perfect is very simple if you remember the rules, and I will share some more rules. Please look out for the new video. I will make another video and make present perfect as simple as possible. So we come to the last slide, which is the activity for the week. So what do you have to do? You have to talk about your experiences using one affirmative and one negative sentence. You have to use the present perfect. So what is the present perfect? It is the subject, right? Plus have or has, plus the past participle, which is the third form of the verb, and then the complement. Please remember that you will also have to put a sentence or write a sentence, speak a sentence in class, which would be a negative sentence as well. So how do you make a negative? You use the same structure of the subject, have or has, plus not. Please remember, you have to add not, and then the past participle and the complement. So this is the structure of the sentence. I've given you 2 examples. I've been to Europe 5 times and I've never eaten shark meat. Please remember that you have to use present perfect. I will give you a few more videos on this topic, so this is not the only thing. You will have more detail coming in the next video. So I will see you next time. Till then, Please take care and message me or email me in case you have any problems, and I will respond to you immediately. See you next time. Bye.